actually started engaging with Bridge earlier because they wanted a developmental evaluation process as well. And so I'm drawing a little bit upon that. And what happened is that each month we had a meeting to talk about M&E requirements and what they needed to be thinking about and how to work. And out of that, and if you understand developmental evaluation, which is Michael Quinn Patton's big thing at the moment, the idea is that you don't necessarily say at the very beginning, this is the indicator we're going to measure, because we don't know which indicators would be most appropriate. So that's part of the process, is to try to create a reflective relationship that asks questions and helps people to think about it more clearly. So there's really 4 elements that came to bear in this particular evaluation, which is an M&E talk called mixed methods. The quantitative, which is a social network analysis, and I'll talk a lot more about that. And then there was an attendance analysis, I'll also speak more about that. And there was 2 qualitative elements. There was in-depth key informant interviews, which are called KIIs, and participant story analysis. Okay, so community of practices are a really interesting phenomenon. And there's quite a bit of literature that's emerging in the M&E sector on communities of practice, on networks. And it comes from the statement that's been made that no single actor, no matter how effective they are, can actually affect social change. We need to have linkages and partnerships and so on and so forth. So there's a couple of big moves that have happened. And then late 90s, early 2000s, public-private partnerships became in vogue. And the other thing that started to really come into vogue, especially internationally, has been the funding of networks or communities of practice. Trying to bring together diverse groups of people so that they together, with their collective input, can make a difference. That it's not just government by itself, it's not just civil society by itself, it's not just corporate social investment by itself. It takes a combination of all those things. And the other thing that's really important to understand is that the perception in the international literature is that networks are not just about advocacy. They're about trying to achieve real outcomes by bringing together the resources, the energy, the drive, the enthusiasm of a very diverse group of people who probably wouldn't hang out together if they weren't brought together by some sort of network. Okay, so the implications for this is that there's 2. For monitoring and evaluation, there's a lot more emphasis worldwide for every kind of project, not just communities of practice, to demonstrate that there is real success happening. People want to know those results. They want to know if their money's making any difference whatsoever. Okay? The second element is, of course, there's a great interest in whether or not this concept of networks or communities of practice are also effective. And so drawing from that literature is where we got some of our methods. Okay. So social network analysis, we did quite a simple one. You can end up doing very complex ones, but then it ends up being a lot more expensive, and so we didn't want to do that. Are you okay? Can you see okay? Okay. So we identified boundaries. So what is the boundary for this group? Are we going to talk to everybody in the country? Are we going to talk to people who have been involved with Bridge? And so altogether there's about 210 people who've attended communities of practice of some sort. But really about 180 are core. You know, this is really where they fit. So for example, at one community of practice, I brought my young university intern because she needed to learn something about this. But she's not core. She doesn't fit in that core group. So she's kind of, we've discounted 30 people who are kind of in that category. So we compiled a list, and we asked you, and many of you may remember filling out this form. We asked you to rate, we listed all the names of the 180 people, and we asked you to rate 0 or leave it blank if you didn't know the person in 2010, and if you knew them in 2011, or didn't know them in 2011. 1, if you knew them, but you hadn't worked with them. 2, if you were doing any sort of work or collaboration with them. Okay? So, connectedness in 2010 looked like this. Hey, this is what 2011 looked like. Isn't that cool? Go back.
We've made a Jersey.
Hi. Come on in. There's a seat there. So, okay, and then you go forward again. Okay, so that's connectedness 2011. Then we should break that out. So this is people who knew each other in 2010 and versus 2011. No, just go back for a second. They call this hubs. So these people, this is Gail Campbell, who knows everybody. She knows everybody in the field. But look at, she's over here. She now isn't the core person any longer. Can you carry on? Okay. Working together in 2010, working together in 2011. So that's the disaggregated version. So people who are collaborating in some way. In 2010, what we looked at is who got up to 20 points, which meant that they knew somebody, or were working with people. 20 points. And again, Gail Campbell is in the middle there. She's essential. But this is the rankings of people who get 20 points when you add up all the points of people knowing and working together in 2011. So you can see, I mean, some of them, fortunately, Carlene and Tava and Barbara are there, and so is Linda Villakazi, which are the conveners of Bridge. But there's a lot of other people, too, who've suddenly become what we call a hub for the community practice. So this provides some quantitative evidence that Bridge is meeting its objectives. Okay, in terms of attendance analysis, Bridge was keeping very nice lists of everybody who attended, but they hadn't created a database. So we worked with them to structure one, and then the ladies spent a lot of time and effort populating it, but looking at the name, the organization, the contact details, what their profile was on social networks. Were they using the social network that Bridge has? Were they on other social networks, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc.? What was their position, their gender, their age? What type of innovator are they? Were they a funder, somebody who's innovating in the sector, a service provider, a government, etc.? And then attendance, the date that they first attended, and also which sessions that they attended. Okay, so altogether we had 208, 210 attending at least one section. Again, as I said, 180 in the focus group, which represented 89 organizations, which is very impressive, I think. And they attended between 1 and 23 sessions, which is also impressive. On average, there was attendance is 5.5, and I'm very disappointed Kim's not here because she's broken her record. She attended every single person, every single session. She's in the States, oh, okay, maybe, I don't know. 44 were selected to do key informant interviews. And so we managed, because we wanted to span the organizations, we wanted to get gender mix, we wanted to get age mix, we wanted to get all those things. So we purposely selected 44 people. Okay, altogether, just in terms of people who belong to Bridge, 32% are men. As you can see in the room, you guys are really underrepresented. I don't know what's with your gender, but that's education, I'm afraid. Okay. Age categories. The vast majority of us are between 40 and 60, which makes sense, but it also means that you have the people who are truly the movers and shakers in your community. This is, you're not just getting kids wet behind their ears. Okay. That has implications for the social network, which I will talk about later. Okay, Barbara asked me to put in some of the questions that we asked, and these are the questions that we asked. So we asked people why they attended, what would attract you, what's your preferred method or style of receiving notifications. We wanted to know if people were happy with in the sessions, as Barbara said, the core sessions. It was a facilitated process, and there wasn't key experts talking. We wanted to know how people felt like that, because we noticed that there was greater consistency in attendance in the focus groups than there was in the core sessions. So we asked people about that. Then we wanted to know how people felt about social networks, and whether they follow Bridge in various ways and means, and would training help people to use the social network? Okay. And then we asked them about the objectives that Barbara talked about. So do you feel like you've increased your community, a sense of community of support? You're part of a supportive environment. Do you feel like you've gained a better understanding of the sector? Do you feel like through this process, you've been able to maximize some of your resources or maximize resources for the sector, and do you feel like learning has been spread because of this? And then we asked about ideas for topics for the future, so we can help guide that, and what should happen to this group as you move forward. If you think about networks and their life cycles, they move through a process of building trust to achieving objectives, or to setting objectives, to achieving objectives, and then often they fall apart. Okay. Right now, in terms of where this cycle is, the trust has been built largely, and now it's starting to set the objectives. And to nurture such a network and to make sure that it continuously stays effective, we do have to continuously kind of reflect on these things and focus on it, as Barbara did earlier. So here's some key quotes that I thought would be nice. I find the general participation very valuable. It's positive to be part of a broader network. The group of people is very varied and constructive. Not that we all have the answers, but we're learning together. Through these conversations, I've developed ideas from my consultancy, my work, I've deepened my understanding, as well as the challenges and opportunities. That open communications, open possibilities of collaboration. So these are achieving some of the objectives, clearly. I've used the presentation from Benita Williams, who's from Feedback, the organization there, during a bridge meeting to inform our trustees on learner selection. That was kind of a funder. We've successfully established partnerships with Xenix, Transnet Foundation, Chickalulu, from a university person, evaluation opportunities from various groups. We met them through Bridge. We're now using their materials. We're sharing materials. Oops, go back. We're able to cover various aspects. So there's some nice meat in the report that shows some support for these objectives. We did an analysis of the themes, and we found that one of the things, the last thing that we asked people to do is, at the back of their social network analysis, we asked them to tell us a story of how they benefited. And people showed us real evidence that they told us real stories of experience where they felt that their network had grown. There were 23 stories that we analyzed. That resources shared or increased and that collaboration was happening. And then that knowledge was shared, that the information and awareness of issues facing education had really improved and gone up. So in terms of findings, in terms of Bridge's methodology, there was very positive feedback on the sessions. General, people enjoyed coming. Availability of time was the biggest constraint for why people wouldn't necessarily come to a session. But people did want the main sessions to start to mimic a little bit more the focus group sessions, where you do have somebody who's a speaker, so that there's some more technical input, not just the facilitated process. So more content. And that the main meetings should review what's happened in the focus groups, so that people who aren't part of the focus groups can get, at least a taste of what has happened in this other group. In terms of the knowledge management, there was very positive feedback, ladies. But there were requests to circulate agenda and topic summaries in advance, to share more project details. So what is Roz doing? Is there a summary someplace? So that we know that DeSasa is doing that. And so on and so forth. And many respondents appreciated the report summarizing what was happening, but wanted executive summaries at the beginning so that they could decide, they could get just a top-line look and decide if they wanted to read in more depth. In terms of the social network, respondents who don't use the social network enough. Is this surprising? No, you're too old. I'm sorry. This is just true. You have weird outliers like Barbara, who does, and she just embraces every new piece of technology. But we're the email generation, guys, which sucks. So the world is changing. And in the key informant interviews, you acknowledge that. We're going to have to get over this hump. We're going to have to deal with this social network because this is how the world is starting to communicate. But there's a couple of things that we want as a community. We want it to be a little bit easier. So the 2-click rule, the Steve Jobs thing, so you shouldn't have to, when you're looking for a report, you shouldn't have to click, 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 click to try to find something. And that we needed more training because we're going to have to get over this. So hands-on training. But frankly, we're not unusual. People of this generation are struggling all over the world with this phenomenon. Anyway, what we need to, in terms of recommendations, now, Khulisa has a standard practice, which is that we never come up with recommendations on our own. What we do is we have what's called a recommendations workshop. And so the Bridge guys and ourselves sat in a room and we went through the findings and we said, yeah, that makes sense, yes, no, that makes a lot of sense. Oh my God, that's fabulous, so interesting. And from that, the recommendations are formulated. And the reason we do that is that we find that the recommendations actually get implemented. And as an evaluator, and several of you in the room are, we will know there is absolutely nothing worse than knowing your report has served no purpose whatsoever. So getting some ownership and buy-in to the recommendations is really, I think, an absolute critical. So we want to continue with improved processes such as report summaries, clear agenda, etc. But, and this was a big one, right now government has been only peripherally involved in the community of practice. So strategies need to be thought of to bring them in. And several were discussed, one of which is maybe using the DBE's conference rooms for convening bridge sessions. Maybe we figure out a different way of drawing either National in or the GE in or something like that. And in last week's community of practice strategy session, there was a guy from, what did we call it? They've merged the two. So the GD is about to announce a new structure where they clustered 5 districts, and so Kulani and Siddivang have put together into a new word, which you can pronounce it. Equidibang. Yeah. Equidibang. Yes. And he's agreed to be a bit of a pilot, and I think Barbara can talk a little bit more about that. That those 5 districts are going to be a little bit more of a pilot, so that's really exciting. That we need to, and the literature shows this, we need to focus on system outcomes that come out of this. So it's all very well to have output data like how many hits you have on the website, how many people say they're working together. And now we have to start to look at real outcomes of real projects, and I'm very pleased that Bridge is already implementing that. And that one of the things that came out is that we need to help coordinate donors, because you guys are very nice, but you don't talk to each other. So we want to talk more to each other because the rest of us would appreciate that. I think that's a huge assumption that you guys make. Absolutely. I talk to donors all the time. That's probably true. But we don't know anything about it, so we want to be part of that. We just don't talk to you guys about it. That's what's That's possible. Anyway, so to make the social network even better, more intuitive, which will help with us for oldies, provide training. We need to balance sessions with networking opportunities. Again, the literature shows with networking, you need the informal time as well as the formal time. And you have to balance those things because often people make the connections over tea that are really what results in the big bang results. And then enhance your monitoring and evaluation to be able to track these things. That always comes out in recommendations, doesn't it? And use the suggested topics for the 2012 program. And again, we've worked on that. So, in conclusion, there's evidence of progress in the first 3 objectives, and very much like Barbara said, the short-term versus the long-term objectives. Creating common purpose, maximizing resources of the community, shared effective practice, we're really starting to see some evidence of. Contribution of the community to the whole system, and vertical integration of policy and practice, way, 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 way too early to say. It takes years to make an impact on policy. So this is, I'll leave you with that thought, really. Okay, and there we go. Thank you very much. Cool.